Hey friends, how's it going? My name is Gabby. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be filming the mid-year freak out book tag. And this is a video that I've been doing annually on my channel for the last several years now. I'll have all of the previous years that I've done this linked down below. I'm not the original creator for this, by the way. This is a very popular booktube tag that's been going around over the years. This is always one of my favorite videos to make every single year because I feel like this video does a great job at recapping some of my favorites of the year, the most surprising books, the most disappointing books, and I get to talk about some upcoming anticipated releases and things that I still need to read before the end of this year. So this is definitely one of my favorite videos to make every single year. I look forward to it every year and I cannot believe that we are already at the point of the year where I can be making this video. I can't believe it's already June. This year has just been flying by so freaking fast, and I'm really happy to say that so far this reading year has been going very well for me. I have already discovered some of my new favorite books of all time this year, and if you are wondering, so far this year, at the time that I'm filming this video, I have read 109 books so far. And before jumping into all of the books, I just wanted to take a second to thank today's video sponsor, because today's video sponsor is Curology. You know, before starting with Curology, I never really had a strict skincare routine, but it wasn't until earlier this year where I started to realize that my skin was getting so dry. I knew that I needed to make a change, but I had no idea where to start because I know next to nothing when it comes to skincare. And in the summertime, you know, I typically wear less makeup on my face because I'm a little bit more active in the summer and I want my skin to be looking good in the summertime. So I really wanted to try Curology because I had heard really great things, and I love that they have a personalized formula made with my skin in mind. My custom formula helps to clear my skin with ingredients as made for me that help to treat my acne. I also love that I can message my dermatology provider at any time to see if there's any adjustments that I need to make or any changes to see what's better for my skin if I need to. I feel like some skincare routines can get so complicated and so overwhelming with so many steps that it makes me not want to try at all. And that's why I love how simple and easy the skincare routine is with Curology. And I've been using Curology for a little bit over a month now, and I can already feel such a difference in my skin. I especially love putting on the moisturizer right before bed at night because it feels really great on my skin. It's so refreshing and it's not too heavy. So head to the link in my description to sign up for a special offer on your first order. And thank you so much to Curology for sponsoring today's video, and now let's get into the book tag. Alright, so jumping right into the book tag, the first question is one of the hardest questions for me to answer. What is the best book that you've read so far in the year of 2024? And because I have read so many incredible books this year, it's really hard for me to narrow down a top favorite, especially since I've read over 100 books this year. There's a lot of 5 stars that I've had this year, but I've narrowed it down to my top 3. I can't exactly figure out which one of these books is my favorite so far. Like, there's not one of these books that's screaming at me more than the others, but some of my top favorite books that I've read so far this year include Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll, which is so wild. The fact that I get to say one of my own book club picks from the book troop is actually a top contender for my favorite book of the year. That is so wild. I never thought I would see the day, but this book was incredible. I still think about this book all the time. I think without a doubt my favorite romance book that I've read so far this year has to be Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez, and this is definitely a contender to be my favorite book of the year. I just love this so much. I connected with it so much. I laughed. I freaking cried. This book just had everything that I'm looking for in a romance book, and I loved it so much. And then also this book, Once There Were Wolves. This is definitely a contender for my top favorite book of the year. After I finished reading this, I said this is a 6-star book. Like, it's not just 5 stars, it's 6 stars. Like, I love this so much. I think there's so much that I loved about this specifically. Like, I loved the sister relationship in this book. I loved the way that nature is like involved in the story. I love that it took place in Scotland. I love the main protagonist, Inti. She's definitely like one of my favorite characters that I've read about this year, and she's just really stuck with me. I'm thinking about this book all the time, and I actually want to reread it before the end of the year. All right, question number 2 is the best sequel that you've read so far this year. And if you know me and my reading, you know that I'm not a huge series reader. I feel like if you don't tend to read a lot of fantasy, which I don't really read any fantasy, then I feel like it's not very often that you would even read sequels, because I feel like sequels are not that popular in the genres that I read. Like, for thriller, romance, and horror books, I feel like it's really rare to get a sequel. I mean, I guess unless you count Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez, because this is technically like the 3rd book in a series, but I do think that these can be read as standalone books, so I don't know if I would consider this to be the answer for that. But some manga and graphic novels that I've read sequels for this year that I've really enjoyed include Heartstopper Volume 5. This is the 5th volume in the Heartstopper graphic novel series, and Heartstopper has always been one of my favorites. It continues to be one of my favorites. But then also I started reading the Happiness manga series this year, and especially Volume 4 I think was one of my favorites that I've read. This is a manga series that involves these young kids and there's vampires and it's horror, and it's from the same author as Blood on the Tracks. It's definitely one of my favorite series that I've been reading this year. All right, question number 3 is a new release book that you haven't read yet but you're really excited to. I have 2 answers for this. this because I have a novel love story by Ashley Poston, which is quite possibly like my most anticipated romance book for the second half of this year. I feel like these days my romance authors that I will stop and drop everything to read the books that they come out with, it's Emily Henry, it's Abby Jimenez, and then it's Ashley Poston. Like these three are like my holy god tier romance authors. And so the fact that Ashley Poston has a new release that's coming out this year, like I'm just so excited for this book. And this one sounds especially cute because I think it's about this character who steps into the world of her favorite fictional book. It just sounds like it's gonna be so cool, so interesting, right up my alley. I cannot wait to read this. And then of course I also had to include this book, We Used to Live Here, because this book has one of my favorite book premises that I've ever freaking heard in my life. And the marketing for this book, I mean, it's like it's made for me, honestly. It says The Turn of the Key meets Parasite. I love Parasite so fucking much. So like the fact that this is getting compared to that has me especially intrigued. This one actually goes on sale June 18th. I've had this ARC copy just staring at me and I'm so excited for this one, but I also like, I haven't read it yet because I'm debating if I want to like save this one for later this year as like a potential option for my book club, like the booktube, because I do think this book might be a fun one to try and save for the book club, but like, I'm so torn because I want to read this so soon. And then question number 4 is my most anticipated release for the second half of this year. You know, my initial answer for this was going to be the new Alice Feeney, but I actually realized that the Alice Feeney book isn't coming out until January 2025. But a few books that I'm really excited for that are coming out a little bit later this year. One of them is this one called The Last One at the Wedding. This is actually from the same author as Hidden Pictures, which is a thriller that I thought was really interesting. And this one, it just really intrigues me. I mean, I love thrillers that involve like weddings in any way. And I think the cover of this one looks especially interesting. And then of course, I'm also so excited for the new Rainbow Rowell that's coming out this year called Slow Dancing, because I love Rainbow Rowell. You know, like Fangirl is one of my favorite books of all time. I've reread that book an insane amount of times. And the fact that she has a new book coming out is just so exciting to me because it's been a while, you know, like I just really want to see what her writing is like these days. I can't wait. And then I also have this one called Bury Your Gaze. This one's coming out in July. This is one that I'm excited about because it's from the same author as Camp Damascus, which was a horror novel that I read last year that I really enjoyed. And I love the cover for this one. Oh my gosh, it's so colorful. And like Bury Your Gaze, I'm just here for the vibes of this. Question number 5 is going to be your biggest disappointment so far this year. This answer that I have might be a little bit controversial, but I don't think that these books were disappointing because they were bad. I think for me, these books were disappointing because I expected them to both be 5-star books for me. And then after I finished reading them, I was like, oh, I just had the very sad realization that they were just fine. I ended up giving both of these books around 3 stars. But anyways, I think The Women by Kristen Hanna, I'm sorry, I have to say it. It's one of my most disappointing books this year because I expected to give this 5 stars like wholeheartedly because I've loved so much from Kristen Hanna in the past. But this book just didn't really work for me for a number of different reasons. I talked about this in my wrap up from last month. So if you want to see more of my thoughts for like why I found this to be disappointing, I'll have that wrap up link down below. But this was just not what I was hoping it would be. I really do struggle when it comes to like stories about war in historical fiction. I just find them to read very similarly. And even though this book did have some really beautiful messages within, I just never really felt like I connected to Frankie as a main character. And there was just a lot of things that I had with this book that I just didn't love it the way that I thought I would. And then same goes for Here We Go Again, because this is a romance book that I expected to love because both of the previous books that I've read from this author were not only 5 stars, but they were like some of my favorite romance books that I've ever read. So it's almost like I considered this author another one of my, you know, god tier authors that I would drop everything to read the new books that she came out with. And this one unfortunately was just fine for me. I think in this book, the thing that bothered me the most is that I'm not a huge like fan of reading about road trips in general. So like this was definitely not my kind of book. I also don't really care for some of the romance tropes that were in this book. But then also like I just found the character Logan, like one of the girls in this book, to be incredibly obnoxious. Like her character just kind of drove me nuts throughout the entire book. There was a lot of miscommunication between them. I just didn't love this as passionately the way that I wanted to, but I know that a lot of people are loving both this book and The Women. So I know that I have the not so popular opinion on both of these books. Like I recognize that. Question number 6 is going to be the biggest surprise. I feel like there are so many books that I could say for this answer because I feel like this year more than ever, I've been really surprised by some of the books that I'm reading. But one of the books I recently read that I was really surprised by is actually Savor It. This is a book that I'm currently lending to my mom because of how much I loved it. And I was like, Mom, you need to read this because this is a romance book that I went into with some pretty low expectations. But why I wanted to read this one is because the description said it was Schitt's Creek meets The Bear. And I was like, those are 2 of my favorite shows of all time. And then I ended up loving this book so freaking much. It was so cute. This book had everything that I love in a romance because it had funny moments, like moments where I was literally laughing out loud, which rarely ever happens to me reading books in general. But then also it had like the sweet, the beautiful moments, like the moments that pulled on my heartstrings and it made me cry. Low key, they were also like very hot together. Like I was actually like giddy and like blushing and shit over some scenes. Like they were so cute. I would also say that I was very surprised this year by The Other Side of Night because I'd heard so much about this throughout the years. You know, this one actually came out in 2022 and I had been putting it off for some reason. I was surprised by this book in a lot of ways because I didn't think that I was gonna love it as much as I did, but this is one of those like rare thriller experiences where the book actually made me cry. And also like the ending was so mind-blowing and so fascinating. And then same with this one is so random, but Big Swiss. After reading this book, it's really unlocked something in me. Like I am seeking out books, trying to find books that give me the same feeling that I had while reading Big Swiss. This book has been one of those books recently that has really started to like change my reading life in a way because I just love Big Swiss so much. I actually just listened to this one on audio and it was so interesting and so entertaining. It's one of those like weird literary books that I don't really even know how to describe it, but it's just one of those weird literary books where we follow a woman who's like slightly unhinged. She's a little bit obsessive. And this book is also just really weird and strange and sexual, but I was so here for it. And I've just been seeking out like weird literary books that would give me the same feeling because of how much I loved Big Swiss. So that was definitely one of the biggest surprises of the year for me. The next question is your favorite new author, whether that's like a new debut author this year or just somebody that's new to you. For this answer, I also have a few different responses. I mean, my main one is gonna be this girl, Charlotte McConaughey. Is it McConaughey? I was so impressed by this book. I actually also read the book Migrations from this author this year. And even though I didn't love Migrations as much, I just know that there's something about her writing style that like I'm going to pick up every single thing that this author puts out in the future because of how much I loved this. And I really love her writing style, the way that she has this like thriller mystery kind of tone to her book, but I love the way that she incorporates like nature and like the world into her stories, and she has really great characters. Like, oh my god, I will read anything. I'm also going to be reading more from this author, Haley Cass. She wrote this book On the Same Page, which is probably my favorite female romance that I've ever read, and this is definitely also a contender for like one of my top favorite romances that I read this year. Both of these characters are characters that I really connected with and related to a lot. And then also I would love to read more from this author, Jennifer Thorne, because I read Diavala this year and I was really impressed by this book, and this is another one that I had for my book club, the booktube this year, and this was my first time ever reading a book by Jennifer Thorne, but apparently she has a bit of a backlist as well, so I'm definitely curious to read more books from this author after loving this one as much as I did. The next question is going to be your newest fictional crush, and like I don't really get a lot of fictional crushes these days. I feel like it's more rare for me to get fictional crushes, especially from books. Like it's more often that it'll happen for me in like movies or TV shows, like aka every single character in the movie Challengers. If you know, you know. Those are my fictional crushes, okay? But if I did have to pick some fictional crushes from books that I've been reading lately, I do think either Fisher or Sage from Savor It, and I would also say Riley, but especially Gianna in this book On the Same Page. I really loved Gianna's character. I thought she was so adorable. Like I would definitely say that I probably have a fictional crush on her. And then the next question is your newest favorite character. And again, I know I'm gonna be whipping out some of the same books here, but I do love both of the characters in On the Same Page. These are just two characters that I feel like I've probably related to the most out of all the stuff that I've read this year. I also just, oh my god, as I mentioned, I love Inti's character in this book, Once There Were Wolves. I think she's so well written and so interesting. And then I really did love both Justin and Emma in Just for the Summer. They're characters that I've been thinking a lot about since I read this book. I just really emotionally connected with this and connected with them as characters. And the next question is a book that made you cry. I think we know what I'm about to hold up because Just for the Summer, this book made me like ugly cry. You know, like this book made me the most emotional I've felt over a book in a really long time. I feel like this book is one of the only books this year that has really sparked an emotional reaction from me. I mean, I also did mention The Other Side of Night. This is definitely one that also made me emotional, but not nearly on the same level as this book did. All right, the next question is going to be a book that made you happy. And I think one of the books that made me the happiest to read this year has got to be Funny Story by Emily Henry, because this book, I mean, Emily Henry's books always make me so happy to read. You know, it's why she's one of my favorite romance authors, but I feel like especially this one, I feel like I just had a dorky smile on my face like the entire time that I was reading this. You know, like these characters were just really funny, like they had really great banter together. This is definitely one of those books that I'll look back on that made me the happiest to read. Like there's nothing like reading the new Emily Henry and just absolutely loving it, you know? Like nobody does banter like Emily Henry does banter. But then I also feel like one of the books that made me the happiest to read this year has got to be Kill for Me, Kill for You, because I say this like every time that I do this book tag, but there is nothing that makes makes me more happy as a reader than to read a really fun, fast-paced thriller that like really grips me, because I feel like it's so rare for me to get that feeling with a thriller where like I'm just loving it, you know, like I'm getting that feeling where like I have to keep my eyeballs glued to the page, like flipping the pages. I feel like that rarely ever happens because some thrillers these days can just be so like predictable or like slow paced or just like not as fun. This book was so fun. It just kept me so hooked from beginning to end. Every time I set this book down, like I could not wait. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Like I just had to know where the story was going. And I loved that about it. Like this book made me so happy to read this year. The next question says your favorite book to film adaptation that you've seen this year. I was actually looking through like all of my books that I've read this year, and I don't think that I've read anything that's been adapted. I mean, I did end up reading the book A Man Called Uwe earlier this year, but I have no interest in seeing the adaptation after I didn't really care for that one. But I think one of the only things I could think of was Heartstopper. I did end up reading volume 5 this year, and Heartstopper is one of my favorite like TV show adaptations that I've ever seen. I think the Heartstopper show is so good. Then I thought I would mention, I'm currently reading the book The Watchers by A.M. Shine, and this one does have a movie adaptation that's coming out very soon. I think it actually might be out by the time that this video goes up. So like, who knows, maybe this could be my answer because I'm currently reading it, and so, you know, I haven't seen the movie yet. The next question is, what is the most beautiful book that you've bought or received this year? I have a few answers for this. I mean, one of my favorite covers for books this year is this one called Instructions for Traveling West. This one is actually a poetry collection, but I am just obsessed with this cover. Is it not so beautiful? Like, I really just love the nature vibes of this cover, and then I love like the bold yellow over it. I just think it looks so satisfying. Then as far as like some of my horror books go that I'm just obsessed with these covers, like look at these two, Bloom and Diavala. These are so stunning. I really love this cover, Bloom. I love the size of this book too in general. Like I love that it's just like so small and such a cute hardback size. But then like, I don't know, there's something about this cover that I just really love. Like I love all the flowers and the way that you can see her face back here, and like the simplicity style of this just really works for me. But then I also love, oh my god, Diavala is one of my favorite horror covers. I love that her face is like kind of blurred out like that. It just makes it extra creepy. And like, these might seem kind of like simplistic, but there's something about these as like horror book covers. They just really work for me. Like I love both of these so much. The next question is, what books do you need to read before the end of this year? And like, oh my goodness, how long do you have? I have so many books that I need to read before the end of this year, but let me just tell you about a few. I mean, two of the books that I know I'm going to be reading this month for book clubs include Listen for the Lie and Darling Girls. I'm actually going to be reading Listen for the Lie for the book troop this month if you would like to join us. I can't wait. The live show is going to be in the last weekend of June. It's going to be so much fun. And then I also am going to be reading Darling Girls for my friend Savannah. She has her Lights Out book club that I'm going to be co-hosting with her this month as well. And so there will be a live show for this book on my friend Savannah's channel at the end of this month as well. So both of these are going to be read for book clubs this month. I also can't wait to read How to End a Love Story. I'm actually going to be reading this one because I have decided that the Reese Witherspoon book club series video that I've been doing is going to be continuing in the month of August, because she had this book as her pick for the month of May, which is a book that I've already been highly anticipating. And then she just announced her book club pick for the month of June is this book called The Unwedding, which is another one of my most anticipated books of the year. I'm like, oh my god, look at Reese Witherspoon. Like, she's picking books that I'm actually really interested in reading. So I've decided no matter what the next two picks are, I am going to be reading all 4 of those for a video in August. So I can't wait to read this one and The Unwedding for that video. Another new release that I'm so excited about is The Rom-Commers by Catherine Center. This is another one that I'm hoping to be able to get to this month, but this is definitely one that I would like to read before the end of the year because this is a romance book that just sounds like it's going to be so much fun. I also do have this ARC copy of the new John Fram. This one's called No Road Home, and this one goes on sale July 23rd. But John Fram is an author that I absolutely loved his book The Brightlands, and this is another horror novel from him that I'm really looking forward to. I hope to be able to read this one sometime soon. And then I'm also really looking forward to reading the new Stephen Graham Jones that's coming out a little bit later this year that's called I Was a Teenage Slasher. And then the last question that I added to this book tag, because this is something that I personally love to talk about, is what is your favorite manga that you've read so far this year? Because since I've been getting into reading more manga, I thought it would be the perfect opportunity for me to highlight some of my personal favorite series. Because, you know, as I mentioned just a little bit earlier, I've been reading this series this year called Happiness, and this has quickly become one of my new favorites. It's from the same author as Blood on the Tracks, which is another one of my favorite manga series, but this one one's a horror series. It involves vampires. It's really like gory and weird, and I just really love it. I've only read the first 4 so far, but I'm hoping to read more volumes from this series soon. I also just had to mention that I read the first volume of the series called The Yakuza's Bias, and this one was so much fun. I think if you're a K-pop fan, you absolutely need to read this, because this is about this Japanese like mobster gangster dude who gets obsessed with this K-pop idol, and he like discovers his bias in the K-pop group and like starts to get obsessed with him and like wants to go to all the concerts. Dude, it is so much fun. It's so hilarious. This reads like such satire and has so much commentary on like K-pop fan culture. It was so entertaining. I really love this and I can't wait to continue with this series. And then also the last series that I thought I would mention is the Killing Stalking series. I read the first volume of this last year, I believe, and then I read the next 4. I've read up to volume 5 now, and oh my god, this series is so disturbing and it's so weird and dark, but it's definitely one of my personal favorites. I don't know how to pitch this series to you because it's kind of like a dark romance where like you really shouldn't be rooting for either of the characters because one of them is a killer and the other one is a stalker. And like these books are very dark and very sexual, and like the lines of consent are always very blurry, and it makes you very uncomfortable to read this, but there's just something about this series that keeps me coming back to it, and I've just been really enjoying it so far. I don't know, it's really interesting. This is another one of the series that's kind of like, it's like a train wreck that you can't look away from. You're just like, oh my god, where is this going? So I've really been enjoying Killing Stalking. These aren't necessarily books that I would like go around recommending to anybody because they are very dark and they are very sexual, and if you read it because of me, like, no, you didn't, you know, like, I don't know what you're talking about. But anyways, that is a wrap on this video. I can't believe another year of the mid-year freak out book tag has come and gone. This is definitely one of my favorite videos to make on my channel, as I mentioned, so I will have all the previous years linked down below. I feel like I've been doing this tag for so many years now, like probably since 2016, 2017, like it's been a long time. You'll definitely have to let me know if you've read any of the books that I just mentioned in this video. Let me know what you think of them. Let me know what have been some of your best books that you've read so far this year. What are your most anticipated books going into the second half of this year? Please let me know any of your responses to some of these questions in the comments because I would love to know your answers. And thank you so much for watching as always, and I'll see you very soon with another video. Bye!